Hello, my name is Julia. Welcome to my kitchen. It is apple season. It is fall in Chicago. We have had a beautiful week of fall weather. Mornings have been like low of, somewhere between 58 and 62, and the high is like 70 or 75. Clear blue skies, super sunny, and it's apple season. Last weekend, my family and one of my oldest and dearest friends went apple picking in Northwest Indiana, and we brought the goods home. So, this actually isn't that many apples, but today I'm gonna be making and canning homemade applesauce. The very first thing I need to do is get all these apples washed up and peeled and just cut into chunks. I have decided that I'm gonna make this applesauce in the Instant Pot just to make it a little bit easier, a little less hands-on cooking. And then I'm gonna be using my water bath canner to can the applesauce. The recipe and canning guidelines that I'm using are coming from the National, what is it called? The National Center for Home Food Preservation. It is like the gold standard for safe food preservation guidelines. I will link the recipe that I'm using down below. I also have some frozen strawberries in the freezer, and when I looked up guidelines for canning fruit purees, it has the exact same processing instructions as the applesauce. So I think I'm going to try to make part plain applesauce or like cinnamon applesauce and part strawberry. So anyway, let me get started getting these apples washed up and put into the Instant Pot. I am going to be using a mix of apple varieties for this applesauce. I honestly don't even really remember what we picked. To be honest, the pickings at the orchard were a little slim. It seems like we maybe were a little later in the season for apples for them, so that's a good note for next year to try to go a little earlier than late September if we want the biggest variety and options. This might look like a lot of apples. It's actually not that much. I'm probably gonna get, my guess is that I'm gonna get like 6 pints of applesauce out of this. And in fact, I'm gonna set my Instant Pot up right now. So as I do each apple, I know it might be a little annoying to go back and forth between peeling and cutting, but I don't have a lot of counter space in this kitchen, if you haven't noticed. So I think I'll do either like each apple individually peeled and cut, or I'll just do them in like smaller chunks, like smaller groups. I just don't have a lot of space to do all of the peeling and then all of the chopping. I'm gonna cut these in just chunks like this, nothing too small. Since I am going to be using all of the apples to make applesauce, I am planning on getting more apples this weekend. There is a festival in one of the nearby neighborhoods to where I live it's an apple festival. So every year, it's just kind of like a traditional Chicago street festival where there's a theme. So obviously the theme is apples. So there's lots of different food vendors and farmers and that kind of stuff. Folks that are selling all sorts of apple themed stuff. And the past couple of years, I've gone and come home with a big bag of apples to cook with and eat. So I have some hopes for some additional apple things I'm gonna cook this season. So obviously I would love to get those awesome farm fresh apples. We're still quite a ways away from actually doing the canning, but this giant pot of water is gonna take forever to heat up and bring to a boil, and I want it ready when I'm ready to go. I can always turn it down to simmer, but it'll at least be warm. I'm changing it up a little bit. I'm gonna peel my apples right over the sink and then just make a little stack of them here and do this a little bit more like in batches. The school I went to for kindergarten through 8th grade used to have, and might still have, an apple pie sale every year, which I believe raises money for the school. The middle schoolers, so like the 5th through 8th graders every year, got to make the pies. After school one day, there were different tasks that needed to be completed, like peeling and slicing apples, rolling out crusts, and pouring in pre-measured bags of all of the seasonings that go into the apple pies. When I was in 8th grade, I was on our student council, and a small group of us got to go and actually pick apples during the school day one day. A local orchard had agreed to donate apples, whatever we could pick in that one afternoon. So I think it was like 3 boys and 3 girls with like 2 administrators or something. And it wasn't even kids that I was like very close with or anything. Like, we weren't really good friends, but it was such a fun day. And I have really fond memories of getting to play hooky as allowed by my parents and the school administrators to go and pick apples. And that was around Thanksgiving time, so a lot of families, mine included, would buy one of these pies. Basically, they were refrigerated or frozen, and there was a day where you could pick your pies up right before the holidays and then just bake them at home. There would be baking instructions. So we did that for many years, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I remember it was either 4th or 5th grade that you were allowed to start participating, and it was always like this big exciting thing when we were finally old enough to go make the pies, because it just seemed like such a cool, fun thing to do, and you know, to kind of take over the cafeteria as like our little kitchen workstation. Oh, this is gonna take forever. The last time I did a canning video, which I can link somewhere up here, that video has gotten way more views than any of my other videos, even by standards of a channel bigger than mine, which is amazing. But I learned some things in that video. Namely, people were mad that I didn't have my hair pulled back because they said that that was dirty and disgusting, especially if I was sharing food that I was cooking with other people. They also told me to stop touching my face. What else? Even though I said that I forgot to debubble my jars, I got several comments telling me to debubble my jars. Okay, thanks. I think something that people often forget when they are consuming content online is that there's just like a human on the other end of the screen. And that was me in my kitchen making salsa. I had only ever canned a handful of times, and I've still only canned a handful of times. We're all just learning as we go. So my plea to you as a consumer of content online is, if you have productive, constructive criticism, you can share that and be kind about how you share it. We're all learning here. But anyway, it's been great to see that video get quite a lot of traction, and it still continues to get views every month, every week. There are clearly a lot of people out there with the same interests as me in home food preservation and just learning some of these skills to add to our repertoire of kitchen skills. If you found this video about canning applesauce, I hope that you'll stick around. I do love to cook and bake and try to learn new techniques in the kitchen. So if you feel so inclined, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really does help my channel grow and reach new people who may also be interested in this journey that I am on, learning new things. Hello. All right, I am on my last 6 apples to peel and slice. So here's kind of my plan. I looked up the recipe from the home food preservation, whatever, and according to them, it is completely safe to water bath can apples without any added acidity, for instance, lemon juice. That is what I will be doing. I'm also not going to be adding any sugar. We are not like big applesauce eaters in my family. However, I do have a 9-month-old, and we, in addition to giving him just like plain whole foods, we also do mix in some pouches for him, and all of them are apple based. So there's like apple pear broccoli, apple pear spinach, apple peach, like all these different flavors, apple sweet potato. So I figured it's apple season. Why don't I get some delicious, fresh, local apples and can up some applesauce so that I can make some of those things that we were previously buying. So I won't be adding sugar because the baby just does not need the added sugar. And honestly, neither do we. We eat enough sugar in other foods in our lives. Even though I am not going to be following the exact guideline of the National Center of Home Food Preservation, because that's what it's called and I didn't have to go look it up again. In terms of cooking the applesauce, it shouldn't make a difference because there are no added ingredients that have to go into it besides the water. That's why I decided I'm going to cook my apples in the Instant Pot. And I did look up a couple of Instant Pot recipes for applesauce, and basically I've decided I am going to cut these up, slice them, and just add a cup of water. And if at the end of this I think it's too watery, I'll just turn on the saute function and cook the sauce down a little bit to help it thicken up. I do think I'm gonna be adding some cinnamon though, just to give it a little bit of something. And I'm gonna cook the apples in the pressure cooker for, I think, 8 minutes on high. And then I'll probably let it natural release for some period of time, and then I'll just do a quick release for the rest of it. I do not have a food processor, so in order to get my applesauce into sauce and not just cooked apples, I think my first course of action is going to be a potato masher, and I'll just see how mashed down I can get the apples using that. Not my worry, but the thing that I'm keeping in mind is that I don't want to pose a choking hazard to my son if he's going to be eating this. So I may end up taking out the blender and just sort of blitzing any additional large lumps out of the sauce. At that point, I think I'm going to add some of those frozen strawberries that I have, and maybe just blitz part of the apples with the strawberries. And like I said, the canning guidelines were exactly the same for pints of applesauce as it was for pureed fruit. So I don't think there should be any problem in mixing those two together. And then we will get all of that into our canning jars, and the pints are going to process for 15 minutes. There are guidelines for processing in pints and quarts. I have chosen not to do quarts because that just feels like a lot of applesauce to open at once. Obviously we can keep it in the fridge for a while, but I just wanted to have like smaller volumes to go through at a time so that I don't feel like we have to eat a ton of applesauce just because we opened one of the jars. The first canning project I actually ever did was applesauce, and it was with my friend, actually the friend that I mentioned in a recent video who was sort of baking inspiration to me in the kitchen. She and I lived together after college for a little bit, and we decided together that we wanted to can applesauce. So we did that together, and I have zero recollection of how it actually went, except that it was fun and it was something that I was definitely interested in doing again. She ate the majority of the applesauce. We also did can it in quarts. My water is starting to come to a boil, which is great. I do think it's just starting to kind of simmer a little, so I might just turn the temp down since we do still have a while before these apples are going to be ready to go into the water bath. I actually had to go run out and get another case of jars, canning jars, just because I didn't know. I have 7 pint jars, and I just wasn't sure exactly how much I was going to make, so I didn't want to be in the situation where I did not have enough. But I also needed to get some new lids. So once I get this in the Instant Pot, I'm just going to wash up those additional lids that I know I will be using, and if eventually I do need more jars, I can just wash those up really quick. All right, these are the apples. I'm gonna add, that's 1 cup of water, and that is another ½ a cup. Let me get my cinnamon. The liquid is what builds pressure. So, a lot of moisture is gonna release as these apples cook. Do manual for 8 minutes, and I'll see you when these apples are done. I just got all of my lids and rings washed up, and I washed 2 additional jars from the ones that I just bought today. The 7 that I already had, I ran through the dishwasher last night, and I just had them sitting here with the opening down on a towel to keep them nice and clean. So now, once everything is ready to go and everything's done cooking, I will be ready to load up these jars and get them in the canner. While all that is going, I decided I'm gonna take out the bag of frozen strawberries that I had in my freezer. I ordered these a while ago through the CSA box that I get, the produce box, community supported agriculture, that I get once a week, and they've just been sitting in my freezer. Haven't figured out what to do with them. So I think I'm gonna take them out of the freezer and just like get them in a bowl so they like thaw a little bit, and that way they won't bring the temperature of the applesauce down too much. When you can, and you're using glass jars, you really wanna make sure that you're not shocking the glass with extreme temperature changes, because that's when you're gonna get shattering glass. The goal here is that I will be loading pretty hot applesauce into my jars, which are currently room temperature. It would be better if they were actually like a little bit warm, like if they had just come out of the dishwasher or something, but they should be okay. And then the glass will heat up a little bit, and then I'll be able to put them into the boiling water in the water bath canner. So I don't really want to add something super frozen, and I also think if I try to blend these in super frozen, it's gonna mean that I'm just like pulverizing the applesauce in the blender, and then it'll kind of just be like gooey mess. That's my guess. This, by the way, is a 10-ounce bag. I think I'm just gonna use the whole thing and maybe put it into like half of the jars. I don't know. I haven't quite figured out. I don't know how many jars of applesauce I'm gonna make in general. So it kind of just depends on how much applesauce I get, and then how strawberry-y I want some of it to be. After what feels like forever, we finally started the countdown on the Instant Pot. So 8 minutes of high pressure cooking, and then I might not even let it natural release. Some of the recipes that I was looking at for the Instant Pot applesauce said, you can do a natural release or you can do a controlled quick release. So we'll see how impatient I get, because I want to get this going. I think I might have said this. Once the cans are loaded into the canner, they only have to process for 15 minutes as pints. When this has maybe 4 minutes left on it, I'm gonna turn the heat back up on my canner. It's on like medium low right now, basically just keeping it hot and like a very light simmer, but I do want it to be boiling for starting the processing. All right, I actually made a game time decision. I decided to just puree the strawberries in my blender. So I actually have this like beautiful, I mean, I guess it's like a sorbet. Is that all that sorbet is? Well, at any rate, I've got this beautiful, still partially frozen strawberry whipped up in the blender, sitting off to the side, and I rinsed my blender jar so that I don't contaminate applesauce that I don't want to have strawberry flavor with strawberries. My Instant Pot just beeped 2 minutes ago, and I was gonna let it just natural release while I was finishing this up, but I think I'm antsy, so I kind of want to just crack it open. I did turn the heat up on my canner, so that is boiling now. So it is almost time to get canning. I decided to toss a towel over that. I don't even know if you can hear me, while it was spewing a lot of liquid. The moment of truth. That looks pretty mushy. So I don't think chunkiness is gonna be a problem, which is great, but this does seem quite thin. I know it'll thicken up a bit during the canning process, but I think I'm gonna turn my Instant Pot on saute just to cook down a little bit more of this liquid. This is gonna be my little setup station. I'll take a small ladle and start spooning. I need to leave a 1/4 inch headspace in these jars, which is basically just how much space between the top of the jar and the top of what you're filling it with. So, here we go. I'm so glad that this texture was good enough that I did not need to blend any of it. It's pretty mushy. Just makes my life a little easier. There's not a lot of sauce in here, which is totally fine. I'm just debating if I should add my puree to the rest of this. And then I might be able to get 3 jars. I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I will get 2 jars of plain applesauce and maybe 3 jars of the strawberry applesauce. I'm just gonna put this right in here. I don't actually need to blend any of it because I already pureed those strawberries totally completely. I just want to make sure that the strawberry is really, really mixed in so that there aren't any pockets of pure strawberry, that it's really evenly distributed. Now, I don't mind that this is going to be cinnamon applesauce even with the strawberry, but if you were not into that and you wanted to keep your apple flavor more pure for adding other fruits to it, you could totally leave out the cinnamon altogether, or you could add in cinnamon just to the jars that you know you want it in. So for instance, you could add it directly into the jar and stir that up, or you could mix cinnamon into a big batch before you put it into the jars. I will definitely have enough for this 5th pint jar now that I've added the strawberry. If I have some left over and I don't have enough to can a 6th jar, I'm just gonna put that in a jar straight into the refrigerator, and that might be some of the applesauce that we feed to the baby over the next couple of days. I'm scraping down the inside of this because I do not want to waste a single bit of this applesauce. There's a certain sense of pride when it comes to items that you've made from scratch. All right, so this is the jar that is gonna just sit in our fridge. But these ones, I am gonna take the time to debubble, don't you worry. You do really wanna make sure to be very careful when you're dealing with these jars because the contents are extremely hot. I know that these ones with the strawberry are a bit cooler because the strawberry was frozen. So those are okay to touch with my hands, but I still do want to be careful. The plain apple ones are definitely a little too hot for me to handle with my hands. The final step before these go in the canner is going to be wiping down the rim of the jar with a damp paper towel that has a little bit of white vinegar on it, just to make sure that the edge is very clean and that we should get a good seal during processing. Now, if for some reason the seals fail and one or more of these jars does not fully seal in the canner, that's not the end of the world. I will probably just stick the whole thing right in the freezer once it is totally cool, because again, we want to avoid those extreme changes in temperature. But applesauce will freeze just fine. Honestly, we might even put it in the fridge and try to eat through it because it is apple season, so it feels like the right thing to do. Okay, all of those are debubbled. I'm gonna do one go around with just some water, because there are some little chunky bits on some of these. And then this paper towel has a little bit of vinegar, just plain white vinegar. All right, woo! We're ready to can. Now for the magic. Got my lids. 1, 2, 3, 4. The edge of that 5th one just hit the inside of the jar, so it got some sauce on it. And again, I want a good seal. So finger tight on these jars. The temperature will drop when I put these cans in. My cans are in the canner. It is coming back up to a boil. So I'm gonna put my lid back on, give it a couple of minutes just to make sure that it really is boiling, 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 and then 15 minutes of processing. There are 11 seconds left on my timer, so I'm just gonna go ahead and turn that right off. It has been 15 minutes that these have been processing. Gonna get my heat turned off. There's gonna be a lot of hot steam that comes out of here, so just need to be careful. Those 15 minutes were the perfect amount of time to get everything, almost everything cleaned up. It looks like we didn't have any major issues with these cans. Lots of steam, but you can see there's 5 cans all still standing. Doesn't look like anything major siphoned out of them, so I'm going to just pull these up a little bit out of the water. Just to help them come down to temperature a little bit better. I'm not going to pull them out straight away. I can hear them starting to pop. The popping is the sealing sound. So when there's a change in temperature, that is basically the vacuum seal that gets those lids nice and secure, that keeps these items shelf stable. That was my second one that just popped. It's a very sweet sound. I wish I had more apples to can because I feel like we're probably gonna go through this faster than I expected. My husband and I tasted the half jar that was left of the strawberry applesauce, and it's really good. It's got like a nice tart kick to it. So we decided we're gonna give that to our son for dinner tonight. Not all of it, he'll just have some. Maybe we'll mix in a little bit of yogurt. He'll also have a nice crusty end of a loaf of homemade bread with some, let's see, last night we did almond butter, so we'll probably put a little bit of peanut butter on today. Gotta keep those allergens in the rotation, except for eggs, because he has an egg allergy, so those are out of the rotation. When it comes to the seals on these lids though, we won't actually know for like a full day if they have sealed properly. So when I take them out, I'm going to set them aside over next to the refrigerator on a towel for them to cool completely. And after about a day, I'll take off the rings and test the seals at that point. And if any of those seals haven't sealed, we'll just put that in the fridge and eat it right away. Otherwise, this applesauce is shelf stable, and I will put it in the pantry. I'll find a spot for it in our pantry. I recently reorganized our tiny little pantry that is half of a coat closet. I can link that video here in case you haven't seen that one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon while I got this project done. I haven't canned anything since like the first half of my pregnancy. So we're talking like more than a year ago. It feels so good to be back. I want to do more canning. I definitely want to do more cooking and baking with apples, especially after the Apple Fest that's coming up this weekend. So if you enjoyed this video, it would mean so much to me if you gave it a like and subscribe to my channel to see what else I have in store coming up soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.